So you want to apologize. You really do. But it doesn't go so well. So there could be many reasons for this, but today I want to talk about how to avoid an accidental non-apology. I think we use the term non-apology pretty broadly. It kind of does mean that apology that doesn't go the way we want. It's that the apology doesn't feel like an apology for various reasons to the person on the receiving end. So in this case, I am talking, like I said, about a case where you really do regret that something went awry and you understand that you were a big part of that and you have the intention to change. So that sounds all great. So how could an apology still go wrong? So in this particular case, it's because the person doing the apologizing really, really meant well. And this meaning well is actually the very thing that's going to get in the way here. So the overview here is that an apology, when we at the same time want to explain our intentions, the problem with that is that it starts to sound like an excuse. It starts to sound like a non-apology, right? So that's the first problem, is that if you're bringing that up, oh, well, I really meant this, it sounds like you're making an excuse. So what we need to do is make clear that it is not an excuse. So let's start off with, why is this problematic? So it's problematic to start off with including your intentions because it takes the focus away from the specifics of the apology, and that can make the other person not feel heard or understood. Really, there's a lot of clarity lost with that. It can also lead to the changes that need to happen not occurring and the repair not happening. Because, if the apology itself isn't going into that territory where the person feels understood and the conversation continues from there, that might not even come into the picture. And then finally, it really is, if you think about it, making it about you. You're trying to convey, your good intentions, partly because you want to know maybe that you have high regard for the person, but it's, to some extent, you are also trying to show that you are a good person or that you have a good stance in your relationship with the other person. So this doesn't mean that you can't share vulnerably later about your experience. And so I want to really make that key point. This is really about how to go about the flow of this apology. And so I'll get into that now. So let's say, for example, you did something for someone that you thought they'd like, but then it backfired. It wasn't the right time for them. You realized you weren't taking into account all the factors. And so it did not go well for them. And it was something that you shouldn't have done, even though you meant well. So it might be tempting to lead with, oh, but I wanted it to be such a special time for you. That's tempting, right? I mean, it's vulnerable, it's even relevant, but that's not actually part of the apology, and it should not be coming first or anywhere near the beginning of your interaction with the other person. So you want to make clear right off the bat that there's not anything you're excusing or trying to explain. No buts in there either, right? So not starting off with the, oh, but I wanted it to be this way, or I'm sorry, but this is what I meant. None of that. So instead, you want to just start off with the simple truth. I'm so sorry that, and whatever it was that was your part that you did that you regret. There's a bonus here too. If you reflect back to them their wording about what they felt like you did and how it went, that validates what happened and shows that you understand their perspective on it. So that's the very first step, is simply to just say, I'm so sorry that and then whatever that was. And, as long as it's true for you and and it doesn't feel completely like you're seeing things differently, which is kind of a completely different case if you're in a case where you're not agreeing about what happened. But in this case where you're agreeing about what happened, if you can repeat it back and reflect it back in their words, again, bonus point for them feeling more understood. So the next step, we're not still to the vulnerability, we're still not to telling what your intentions were. The next step is, in the future, and this is about the change you're going to make, right? This is the behavior part of the apology, which is in a lot of ways the most important part. What are you going to do differently because you understand of how your behavior affected this other person? So you're going to say, in the future, and talk about what you would do differently in a similar circumstance. And if you don't know, you can ask. So if you don't know and you're a little confused by that, that's a great time to get into that conversation about what the next steps could be. Right around this time, if you feel like you've talked this part out, about what happened, having taken responsibility for it like that, and having talked about how you'll change, could be the right moment than for sharing your own experience. And it might be that you actually want to do it a different time, just depending on how that flow went. But if, let's say, you still want to do it and it feels like it's the right time, the other person really feels understood, it still could be nice to ask. It could be nice to say, I'd really like to share my experience of this with you too. So then that would be the time to vulnerably share. If you're worried that it'll still come out as an excuse, just be somewhat mindful of how you share it. Go into that vulnerability. Maybe make an I statement. So share, maybe you'd say, I'm disappointed that it didn't work out. It didn't work out when I tried to do this thing for you, because my intention was, even though I understand that it wasn't the right thing now, my intention was for it to go this wonderful way. And so I'm disappointed about that too. So that's you sharing your own experience vulnerably, while still making it clear that that's not trying to excuse what happened, that you still fully understand that. And it's got the most important thing, it's in the right placement. It's coming last. After that full taking responsibility and apology, and after what you'll change for the future. So hopefully that's all clear. I think it's really easy, like I said, with the best of intentions and like with very kind stances, if something goes awry, to get this wrong and to do a non-apology, which is not what we want at all when we are in that really positive stance in the relationship where we care about the other person.